We're following breaking news this midday. Newport News police identified the officer killed during a traffic stop last night.
In an emotional news conference, Chief Steve Drew said Officer Katie Thine died. Drew said Thine had not been with the department long, but had a huge impact on the community. 10 on your side's Andy Fox will have more on Officer Thine and her service in just a few minutes.
Now, this all happened last night on 16th Street. That's near Monitor Merrimack Overlook Park. 10 on your side's Jason Marks joins us live from Newport News. And Jason, the chief gave more details about this deadly traffic stop today, right?
He did, and this is the first time a chief has had to do something like this here in Newport News in 26 years. It was 1994. That was the last time Newport News lost a police officer in the line of duty, and they lost 2 that year. Take a look behind me. Officers were out earlier getting this car ready. This is going to be the car in remembrance of Katie Thine. What they're going to do is they're going to drape this car in black in a little while, I can tell you that. Chief Drew here, the police chief at Newport News, was very emotional as he was giving a briefing to everyone on the events last night. He says that officers were out on 16th Street just before 7, and they were on a drug call. The chief says that 2 officers could smell drugs as they walked up to a car in the area. They were able to get the passenger out of the car. Her name was Ivy Reynolds. She has been charged. The 24-year-old officer, Katie Thine, as you mentioned, she and that other officer then tried to get Vernon Green out of the car, and that's when tragedy took place.
And then he accelerates. One officer was able to step out of the way, and Officer Thine was not. She was drug in the vehicle, or drug outside the vehicle, for about a block. The vehicle came to rest as it smashed into a tree, where she was pinned between that door and that tree.
And Thine was rushed to Centera Norfolk General, where she succumbed from her injuries. Drew told us that he couldn't go into the investigation anymore, but he did say that Thine was wearing a body camera, so obviously investigators are looking at that footage. Green has been charged with felony homicide, felony eluding, and also drug charges. He is in jail this midday, and he did decline a request for an on-camera interview. I'm told the police officers will be out here in a little while to start draping this car in black in remembrance of the first officer who's fallen here in Newport News in 26 years. That's the latest here in Newport News. Jason Marks, 10 on your side.
And Jason mentioned it. Chief Steve Drew was extremely emotional today as he opened up about Officer Katie Thine.
Our Andy Fox picks up our team coverage now, and Andy, Drew says Thine had a big impact on the department and on her community.
There's no doubt about it. Huge impact. Chief Steve Drew says Officer Katie Thine had been with the department since 2018. She came to the police from the Navy and was a logistics specialist in the Navy Reserve and was assigned to Navy Operational Support Center, Norfolk. In her short term on the police force, she made an immediate impact. This is Officer Katie Thine at her police graduation ceremony, June 28, 2019. You can tell her immediate warm friendship with Newport News Police Chief Steve Drew. So you can understand his emotion during the news conference.
She was very active in the community, and you know, sometimes we try to teach that, but she got it. And if you ever met her, if you ever saw her, all she did was smile. You'd almost start to laugh at her because she was always smiling. I don't know about what, but she was always smiling.
Look at these pictures, and you can tell the good soul Katie Thine had. Assigned to the South Precinct, lower income neighborhoods, she cared about the community. She cared about a lot. It's no surprise the Peninsula Regional Animal Shelter posted this on how Officer Thine was involved in Tail Wagging Tuesdays.
She was very active in community events, stuff with youth. In fact, she assisted in coaching one of the basketball teams with the Boys and Girls Club that we play.
Thine would have been with the children tomorrow, reaching out, establishing those bonds.
Matter of fact, those games are scheduled tomorrow. We had a conversation. Should we cancel them? The answer is no.
Coach Thine would have wanted it this way, that the games go on, and they will, this dedicated public servant.
She is and will always be a valued member of this department, and part of a tragic event that happened yesterday that will affect this department and community, the future of its existence.
Katie Thine leaves behind a loving partner, her mother, to whom Chief Drew spoke last night, a brother, a stepfather, and a 2-year-old daughter named Reagan, who Chief Drew says looks just like her mother. Chief Drew said this: "As we go forward, days will be challenging. We will lean on each other, and it's okay to cry." It sure is. In the newsroom, Andy Fox, 10 on your side.
Andy, thank you. And to recap for you, 2 people now face charges in this deadly traffic stop. The driver, 38-year-old Vernon Green II, is charged with felony homicide, eluding, and drug charges. The passenger, 38-year-old Ivy Runnels of Hampton, faces a drug charge. Right now, we are working to get mugshots for both suspects.
Chief Drew also talked about the outpouring of support the Newport News Police Department has received. Agencies all over the area shared their condolences on Twitter, including the Norfolk, Portsmouth, and Hampton Police Departments. Those are just a few of the many messages of support to Newport News Police. We're going to continue to follow this story throughout the day, and we'll have much more on Officer Katie Thine tonight on Wavy News 10 starting at 4.